Hello and welcome to another edition of Sportskeeda's Rumours Roundup. My name's Stephanie Chase and I'm going to be bringing you the 10 biggest rumours of the week from the world of wrestling. So let's get started. Our first rumour of the week concerns why Shayna Baszler made an appearance on this week's Raw Underground. Shayna Baszler appeared on Raw Underground this week and single-handedly defeated 3 women, also becoming the first female superstar to compete in one of the unsanctioned shoot fights. And on the latest edition of Dropkick Discussions, Tom Colohue revealed that the reason why Shayna was part of Raw Underground is because Shane McMahon is a huge fan of her work. The fact that Shane is a big fan of her work is very interesting to note, as it had been previously reported that Vince McMahon isn't too high on her. Tom reported that there's been a lot of changes to the Raw women's title picture, and Shayna Baszler had previously been in and then she's been out. Tom added, Shane McMahon is actually a very big fan of Shayna Baszler, so he saw a chance to use her. Shayna Baszler recently returned to WWE after a brief hiatus and was booked in an angle involving Nia Jax. However, Nia was then suspended for attacking WWE producer Pat Buck, and Shayna seems to be involved in Raw Underground going forward. Shayna's introduction to Raw Underground will hopefully freshen up her character and see her portrayed as the monster she was always intended to be on WWE TV. And it's worth noting that Raw Underground is still in its early stages, so Shayna could play an important role in its success going forward. And we could also see a top women's superstar from SmackDown cross over to challenge Shayna on Raw Underground. Sticking with Raw Underground, our second rumour of the week concerns why the dancers from Raw Underground were removed for week 2. Now, Raw Underground has been pretty innovative, but one thing it did include was female dancers, which were suspiciously absent from the second edition. But if you think the reason for the dancers being absent for week 2 was because of a negative audience reaction, you'd be wrong, as both episodes of Raw Underground were taped on the same day. In the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer pointed out that the reason for the dancers' removal could be down to Vince McMahon. Dave said, after they taped the first installment, somebody convinced Vince, or Vince decided on his own, that the dancing girls didn't fit. Dave went on to add that removing the girls was probably a good call, as WWE are trying to push themselves as a leader of the women's evolution in sports, and having dancing girls like that kind of counteracts the whole message. Our next rumour of the week concerns the return of Velveteen Dream to NXT. Velveteen Dream returned to NXT this week after a brief hiatus, and reportedly there's a considerable amount of heat on the superstar. Fightful Select reported that Velveteen Dream's return was kept very quiet from the other members of the NXT roster, most of whom only found out he was scheduled to come back minutes before it happened. Velveteen Dream has reportedly been on the receiving end of significant hate backstage for a while due to some of his unprofessional behaviour. Dream has also reportedly been given preferential treatment in a number of situations where other superstars feel that anyone else would have been fired. Fightful added that WWE has never given any updates on any disciplinary action that Velveteen Dream might have faced. Velveteen Dream was accused of having inappropriate communications with underage boys during the Speaking Out movement. He was taken off WWE TV and denied the allegations. Velveteen Dream may be back on NXT TV, but the heat is certainly on him to get his act together with regards to his life outside the ring. Our next rumour of the week looks at if plans for AJ Styles have been cancelled. Now, AJ Styles is one of the biggest superstars in WWE, but there have been rumours that he's been unhappy recently since the release of his friends Gallows and Anderson. AJ Styles currently holds the Intercontinental Championship and appears on SmackDown, but he's currently not involved in any program. But reports had suggested that WWE were planning to do AJ versus Jeff Hardy at SummerSlam. Unfortunately, Dave Meltzer has since reported that Vince McMahon tore up those plans and nixed a number of angles that were due to take place on SmackDown. While talking about a possible SummerSlam card in the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave noted that WWE were planning to do King Corbin versus Matt Riddle, which could potentially become a 3-way involving Sheamus, and an AJ Styles Intercontinental title match. Dave added, at one point Styles versus Hardy was penciled in for that spot, but when Vince McMahon tore up SmackDown as of late, the angles to kick that off were torn up, so who knows if that's still the plan. But with SummerSlam fast approaching, WWE better hurry up and find a worthy opponent for the phenomenal one. Leaving AJ out of SummerSlam could be potentially dangerous for WWE, as both AEW and Impact have reportedly shown interest in signing him. Sticking with potential SummerSlam plans, we're next asking, is Kevin Owens possibly being left out of the biggest party of the summer? On Wrestling Observer Radio this week, Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer spoke about the Dominic Mysterio and Seth Rollins angle that kicked off this week's Raw. The two talked about how nobody came to Dominic's aid when he was being attacked with a kendo stick, and while discussing who could have potentially helped, Kevin Owens' name came up. And it had also been previously reported that Kevin Owens was the backup plan for Seth Rollins' next feud should Rey Mysterio not sign a new WWE contract. And if that had happened, it was highly likely that Owens would be the one to face Rollins at SummerSlam. Now, with Rey having signed his new contract, Kevin Owens has been left completely directionless in WWE. With only one Raw left before SummerSlam, it's highly unlikely that Kevin Owens is going to build a feud before the pay-per-view. Owens hasn't been involved in a storyline since Extreme Rules, and on Extreme Rules, he had a last-minute match on the kickoff show with Murphy. So you gotta wonder, when are WWE ever gonna see the real value in the prize fighter? For our next rumor of the week, we're looking at, are there more COVID-19 cases in WWE? Now, a few months ago, many WWE superstars tested positive for COVID-19, forcing the company to employ stricter testing measures. Now, it had been reported that WWE wanted to tape 2 episodes of SmackDown on August 4th, but the promotion cancelled the second taping right at the last minute. Now, Mike Johnson of PWI Insider has reported that the reason for the cancellation of the tapings was because of positive COVID-19 cases, but there's no report yet on who these WWE superstars are. Mike said, "I've been told by 3 different sources that the second SmackDown taping got cancelled at the last second because they had more positives." For our next rumor of the week, we're wondering if Carmella could be a member of Retribution. Now, Carmella has not appeared on WWE TV since Money in the Bank, but now rumours are doing the rounds that she could be a member of Retribution. The reason being that many WWE fans spotted that one of the Retribution members did a moonwalk, and well, that kind of seems like something Carmella would do. However, Tom Colohue on the latest Dropkick discussions said that he doesn't think Carmella's a member of Retribution, because if she was, she wouldn't give it away that easy. However, Tom did have some information on another possible female member of the faction. You see, the rumour being discussed currently points to the next set of NXT call-ups being revealed as the faction's members, one of whom could be Vanessa Bourne. Tom said of Vanessa, "That's someone who's been mentioned to me by someone backstage, and that has certainly been very strongly suggested." And a lot of people have picked up on the hair of one of the members of Retribution and believe that relates to Vanessa Bourne. Our next rumor of the week relates to the unscripted nature of Raw promos. On the latest episode of Raw, Ric Flair was written off WWE TV after Randy Orton delivered a punked kick to the Hall of Famer. However, the promos from Orton and Flair before the assault garnered praise from all corners. So who wrote these terrific promos for Randy Orton and Ric Flair? Well, they did, of course. That's why it was so good. On the latest Dropkick discussions, Tom Colohue reported that Ric Flair was still meant to be in Randy Orton's corner at SummerSlam, but due to health issues, they made the decision to write him off WWE TV at the last minute. Tom said, "As such, we got quite a real promo from both men as they didn't have much to go on. They weren't given much writing to essentially say, go out there and hit these exact notes." Tom added, "So that's close to a very real promo from both those guys, with some editing where they would write off a few lines and so on and so forth." And I think we can all agree that despite the segment being written at the last second, both Flair and Orton really stepped up to deliver great performances. Sticking with Orton and Flair, we're next looking at the original plans for them at SummerSlam. On this week's Wrestling Observer Live, Brian Alvarez revealed that the angle you saw with Ric Flair and Randy Orton was supposed to happen the week prior. But that was the week that Vince McMahon reportedly tore up the entire script for Raw several times. Alvarez added that by the time it was time to do the show, they had 2 segments. One of them was Randy Orton beats up Ric Flair. And by the time the show ended, they ended up doing one of the segments and saving the other for the week after. But you do have to wonder, has Randy Orton and Ric Flair's alliance really come to an end, or are WWE just cooking up a massive swerve for SummerSlam? Our next rumor of the week asks if Drew McIntyre is responsible for a cancel push. Well, not personally responsible. Now, Drew McIntyre has done a great job as WWE's Universal Champion, but unfortunately, due to circumstances outside of his control, it hasn't all really gone how he would have wanted. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, he never got to have that big WrestleMania crowning moment that champions like Daniel Bryan and Kofi Kingston before him enjoyed. And even though McIntyre has tried his best to present himself as a top guy, you must admit that having no live audience has really hampered his push. And now Dave Meltzer has stated that the reason AEW isn't pushing certain wrestlers is because they don't want a Drew McIntyre type situation. Dave noted on Wrestling Observer Radio that AEW has held off peaking the push of some wrestlers because they don't want to do the Drew McIntyre thing everything to them. And although AEW has been doing really well in the ratings, you kind of have to agree with them, because when you're trying to build a new top guy, it really is hard to do it without hearing those roars of the fans behind them. And that's all from me this week. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Stephanie Chase, and don't forget to subscribe to Sportskeeda's YouTube channel and find them on Twitter over at SK Pro Wrestling, and you can find me at Stephanie M. Chase.